Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Canucks Conversation, brought to you by the great folks over at HSBC World Rugby Sevens, Western Canada's largest sporting event. This year is the 9th time the event has visited Vancouver as part of the World Rugby Sevens series. Be sure to check them out. BC Place, February 23rd to 25th. Jam-packed 3 full days of rugby and partying. Tickets on sale now at vansevens.com, starting from just $40 per day. And if you want to go, we've got a 4-pack of tickets for the entire weekend to give away. Text hashtag sevens, that's SEVENS, to 778-402-9680 for your chance to win. We'll be giving away a 4-pack each week until the event. Text hashtag sevens to 778-402-9680. We are coming to you from the iconic Sheraton Wall Center in beautiful downtown Vancouver. And I found out today they do weddings here. So if you want to do a wedding, be sure to call the Wall Center. 55,000 square feet. I was thinking about this. If I ever get married, right, and I want to do my wedding at the Wall Center, theoretically, we could do like a post-game show because the studio's in the same place where the wedding reception hall is.
I don't think your girlfriend would appreciate that.
She'd be on the post-game show. She's a huge part of the story. And we're going to talk about post-game comments. It's a big topic of today's show. But anyways, just a thought I had that just came to mind. So I thought I'd get it out there. But like I said, this is Canucks Conversation. My name is Dave Gugelli. That is Harmon Dial. The man at the controls is Grady Sass. Actually, it's our intern, Lachlan Irvin. But Grady Sass is still our technical producer. Lachlan is just hitting switches for us today. Okay. Where do you want to start, Harmon? Like, there was a game last night. I'm really itching to talk about the perspective of post-game comments because that's a big part of the story. But before we get to that, let's break down the game. The Vancouver Canucks losing to the St. Louis Blues 4-3.
Okay, so I've got an idea.
Okay.
I think every Canuck except Pius Suter should be banned from wearing those chrome helmets.
Oh my gosh. Those chrome helmets are disgusting, by the way. Let's start there.
Yeah.
I saw it in practice. Loved them.
Me too.
The takes from both of us. Those look great. As soon as you come out with that blue, no,
it doesn't work.
Doesn't work. Get rid of them. Get rid of them immediately. They look awful. Jeff Patterson explained to us his conversation that he had with Red Hamilton about why, Canucks equipment manager, why those won't work on the road jerseys. And that's respectable. Like, I understand. Not work, but like work in terms of logistics of getting them on the road and all that. I get that. But man, if those can't be put with the white jerseys, and I'm scared to even say that they'd look good with the white jerseys because they looked so bad last night. Never wear those again. One more time they'll wear them. But I said it on Rinkwide last night. Those are going to go down with the Sprite can reverse retros and the 7th man banner as one of the most bizarre things that's ever happened in Vancouver Canucks history.
Yeah, and you think about, I think my favorite shiny helmet, I don't have a lot. Because I typically don't like Vegas's, for example, but LA I think does it pretty well. And the reason I think it works is because their unis are white. And again, we saw the practice shots with the Canucks white.
It looks sharp.
And they look sharp. But with the blue, it just
looks horrible.
Didn't work. As it pertains to the game itself, I think it was an interesting, weird flow to it. Tempo, momentum, because Canucks came out absolutely blazing. First 11 minutes, I don't think the Blues even registered one shot on goal. And then there was essentially a 3-minute stretch in the first period that created the 2-0 deficit, where I think the difference was that the Canucks made louder, bigger mistakes than the Blues did when they were under siege. So in that 3-minute stretch, you had a JT Miller turnover down low, and then there was a coverage mistake right after that where Hronek was already covering Robert Thomas in the corner. Miller, as the centerman down low, should have gone to the slot to take away Jake Neighbors. Instead, he sort of doubled down towards Thomas. So you have 2 Canucks on one St. Louis Blues player in the corner, and they still can't deny the pass. And so, for instance, on the replay, it'll show that Brock Besser was a second too late to get to Neighbors. That's not his guy. He's supposed to be covering the weak side point defenseman.
He's covering for the mistake.
Exactly. So 2 mistakes there. Then you have the Kuzmenko turnover as the last man back and all the sort of scrambling that happened after that. Then the Juleson puck over glass penalty. Then on the PK itself, Tyler Myers first fails to clear the zone and then allows a cross-seam pass. and it's 2-0 right there. That's all within like a 2.5, 3-minute stretch of the type of mistakes that the Blues didn't have, because you look at the type of look that Neighbors had on that first St. Louis Blues goal, for example. When the Canucks had zone time through the first 10 minutes.
10 minutes, yep.
If you remember, when the Canucks would funnel the puck into the slot, Miller, for example, made a couple passes. The Blues did a good job of, at the last second, at least getting a stick to at least partially check the player so that it wasn't a clean shot on net. So I think it was just a little 3-minute lapse there that created that deficit. Now, credit to them for coming back in that game, at least getting a point out of it. That's massive, but that's, I think, what dug them that early hole.
We're obviously going to talk about Pius Suter. Piusmania runs wild is the headline of this show and this podcast. We're going to talk about headlines later. But those first two St. Louis goals, those were the ones where I looked at it and I said, Rick Tocchet keeps talking about defending the guts of the ice and not allowing east-west movement. Those were two examples of them not doing that, doing the opposite of what Rick Tocchet wants to see his team do. And then obviously you have Nikita Zadorov on the Toropchenko goal, which eventually leads to Zadorov sitting. And then today at Canucks practice, it was noted by our pal Jeff Patterson, I think it was J-Pat that tweeted it, that Zadorov was doing a lot of one-on-one work with Rick Tocchet. And there was a lot of pointing going on and a lot of teaching going on with Nikita Zadorov after the blown coverage last night. Yes, Pius Suter scores the 3 goals. He's up to 12 goals on the season now. They're going to keep the same lines. That's the other thing we saw in practice. They're going to keep the same lineup. Ilya Mikheyev and Andrei Kuzmenko are still with Elias Pettersson. This team needs to start finishing. The third period, there was 3 opportunities. One was Ilya Mikheyev put the puck through the crease and out the other side, misses the net. You got to finish that. JT Miller, with a bunch of traffic in front, shovels the puck wide. That one's a bit tougher to finish on, I suppose. But Brock Besser misses a pretty prime opportunity as well, where he didn't have an open net, but those were going in for Besser at the start of the year. He remains at 27 goals on the season. Canucks got to start finishing. Like those are 3 right there that would have made the difference had they gone in.
True. I think Hofer also played exceptional.
The overtime save on Hronek really stands out.
Yeah, I mean, that third period as a whole, I mean, I think it was a Mikheyev chance coming on the rush where he made the big glove stop. I thought he was really sharp, and yes, the Canucks do need to finish a bit better in those situations, but they've done it the entire season, and you're not going to finish your chances well over all 82 games. You're occasionally going to have nights like that. And for the Canucks to still come out of it with a point, given that they were entering the third period with a 2-0 deficit, that's always a really, really tough mountain to climb. I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but I would guess that probably 90 to 95% of situations where a team is winning, is up by 2 goals entering the third period, they're going to win that game. They're going to close it down. So for Suter to score the hat trick and again, at least help the Canucks continue accumulating points, there's at least something to salvage there. Someone asked me about Casey DeSmith. We're going to get to anyone else first, and then Dave Hall's going to join us later to close out the show. Someone asked about Casey DeSmith because I don't want to focus on Casey DeSmith right now. I want to get to the story of the night, and that was the overtime goal, the non-call on Elias Pettersson, and the comments afterward from Rick Tocchet, which were completely fair comments and were presented as that by every media member that was in the room for that quote. I want to be careful with my words here, but let's go through everything that happened. Do we have the clip here of what Tocchet said for full context? This is what Rick Tocchet said post game. Let's pull this clip up here. Tocchet talking about Elias Pettersson after the game last night.
Thought on the overtime goal, it looked like Petey may have been interfered with a little bit there.
Those two refs are the best in the league. I got to take a look at it. More concerned about other stuff on that goal.
Overall, and maybe this was one of them, but did it look to you like maybe Petey was a little off tonight?
Yeah. I haven't liked this game in the last 3 or 4 games. We got to get him going.
What in particular do you think he needs to do more?
I think he's got to skate. He's got to start skating a little bit. I think he's, I think he's good with the moves sometimes, but I think when you have speed and make those moves, that's when he's at his best. So yeah, we got to, we'll get him going.
So on the same night where we see what's said in LA by Todd McClellan and what's said by Drew Doughty, those comments that you just heard where Rick Tocchet is answering questions from Farhan, answering questions from PJ, very honestly, as he always does, as we as media, as fans of the team, I'm sure, appreciate. He says those comments. And today, let's start with Pettersson. Let's start with Pettersson because I'm building towards something here. Let's see Pettersson's response to all this. The videos haven't come out at the time of this recording, so I apologize. We don't have the audio or the video here, but let's pull up the quote here from Elias Pettersson. There's two here that our pal, like I said, JPat tweeted out. Let's pull it up here, Grady. From JPat. This is what EP40 said. It's a professional game, and if the coach wants more of me, I'm going to try to be better, next game. And then he continued. And he said about the non-call in OT, if the ref misses it or not, looking back on the clip, I had 2 turnovers to get them the puck. Whether it's a non-call or not, it's not up to me. I have to do a better job before then. Okay. Now let's go to what actually happened on that OT sequence. Elias Pettersson is out for over a minute. Elias Pettersson turns over the puck twice, and then he's pushed by Brayden Schenn in what I thought should have been called a penalty. And I think a bigger issue, and this is one, I think this is going to be a conversation we have for a couple days. The conversation that I'm going to have with you tomorrow, Harbin, is probably going to be more about how many other sports can you look at a penalty and have a 50-50 split between fans saying that's not a penalty or that is a penalty? Not many. And I think that's a huge problem for the NHL. One we've discussed before, and why we're not going to focus on that angle too much today. What we are going to focus on are the 2 turnovers right before the goal. And in my opinion, Pettersson going down too easily, not because he's trying to flop, not because he's trying to get the call. Pettersson's a smart hockey player. He knows there's pressure coming. He's expecting to feel pressure. What he isn't expecting is to get shoved. And he's also on his last legs. That shift was probably too long. That's another thing that I'm sure, like I said on Rinkwide, if we could inject truth serum into Rick Tocchet, I'm pretty sure Rick Tocchet would have, when he says, I didn't like a couple things on that goal, I think one of the things he would have said is, I didn't like how long Pettersson's shift was. I think that's one of the angles that we need to focus on. The guy is probably dead tired at that point. A gust of wind could have knocked him over. He's dead tired. And again, I'm exaggerating as I tend to do, but he's pushed by Brayden Schenn. Obviously that's interference, but that shouldn't even be in the cards. Like, you shouldn't even be in that position because Elias Pettersson is supposed to be this dynamo with the puck at holding on to the puck. And he knows he made the mistakes on that play. And that's what it comes down to, in my opinion, is it should have been called a penalty. It wasn't. You can't cry over spilled milk, and Pettersson needs to be better on that play. There's a lot of different angles on it.
Yeah, so a couple things there. Number one, I didn't like that he also took a fraction of a second to look towards the ref when he fell down. I think that may have cost him the opportunity to get up faster and maybe disrupt that pass to Schenn. Second, I like the fact that he owned up to it today.
Totally.
That's what you need to do as a leader, as one of the best players, is when you make a mistake, which all players, including star ones around the NHL, do, is own up to it. Third, that is also the interference. First of all, that's blatant, whether you want to call it a cross-check interference. It's a penalty. But do you think that Pettersson's getting that call in the overtime of a playoff series?
Exactly. That is what I keep coming back to, Harmon. This team keeps looking through the lens of when it's playoffs, this is how it's going to be. That's exactly how it's going to be. There's going to be non-calls.
And it's good for this to happen now in the regular season as opposed to in the playoffs, because now I bet you next time Pettersson's going to be more cognizant in that situation of, first of all, not turning the puck over, but also not looking towards the ref and just
you don't have time to look at the
on
ref.
The next play, right? So this happens. It's not a huge deal. It's a learning moment. But between the way Tocchet reacted to the play, how he commented about needing a little bit more from Pettersson in that OT play in particular, I didn't have a problem at all with what he said. I thought it was totally fair. And Pettersson's response today was also what I wanted to hear from him.
Exactly. Like, nobody is, well, I shouldn't say nobody because somebody did, but we're not sensationalizing what's happening here. He says he wants more from the player. That's totally fair. I don't think the player here is coming out and saying, That's ridiculous. He's not pulling a Pierre-Luc Dubois and saying, I can't believe my coach would say a bad thing about me. That's not what we're seeing here. That's not what's happening. And that, okay, pull up this quote from today. Just, it really bugged me. Not what Tocchet said, the context that I'm about to provide. Let's see this quote from Tocchet, talking about how his comments were perceived and received last night. Perceived and received. Tocchet says he's surprised how his comments about Pettersson last night have been portrayed as coach blast star player. Said he gave an honest answer to a couple of questions. Says he doesn't want to, but may have to be guarded with his answers now. Here's the issue I have with this, Harmon. Rick Tocchet has gotten so much praise for how honest he's been with the media, and there's a really good relationship between the media and the coach in this city right now. And of course, you know, when you're winning, that's going to naturally happen to some extent, but he's always been really honest. You ask him a question, you're going to get the answer. You're going to get the thought process. No, you know, holding the cards close to his chest like Travis always did. And, you know, we like Travis too, but I'm just saying Travis was a lot more guarded in the way he answered questions. I had to look because from what I saw, there were no, like I saw Daily Hive's headline. I saw Pasadabulis. I saw everybody wrote an article that had Tocchet and Pettersson in the headline. Of course, that's the story. The one we went with at Canucks Army, I'll pull it up because I joked with Wyatt last night about the Stanchies. This is my conversation with Wyatt, okay? This is my conversation with Wyatt. The Stanchies. Tocchet calls out Pettersson as Canucks lose to Blues. I was joking with Wyatt. He goes, says a word. He said, that's too sensationalist. And I was joking. And I said, Tocchet rips Pettersson after loss. Is EP40 headed for Chicago? I'm joking. Okay? The one we go with is the Stanchies. Tocchet wants more from Pettersson after Canucks loss to Blues. Because that is what was said. That is a fair portrayal of the comments. And for the most part, that's what I saw from every other outlet. So to hear Tocchet say today he wasn't happy with how it was perceived. Hell, I saw Rob Williams on Twitter saying, you know, I think this quote looks worse in print than it did in the actual room. And if, like we did, we provided the context with the full video. That's not a coach calling out a player. It's really not. It's not. We saw the full context of Tocchet's quote. That's all it was, is him saying, yeah, I would like more. Also, keep in mind, he was asked about the player. He didn't come into the room and say, hold on, before I take any questions, I need to call out Elias Pettersson. That's not what happened here. So to see Tocchet be upset about it, I had to go look. And I had to try to find where he could get this idea that his comments were portrayed unfairly. And I'm not going to get too into it, but if you want to find out, folks, Google Pettersson Tocchet, and you will find that the only place that had a headline like that, the headline was not written by someone in the room that night. It was not written by a media member in the room. And I'll just say it. It was the regional rights holder. It was the regional and national rights holder that had a headline of that. And it was just on a video. It was that Tocchet calls out Pettersson or whatever it was. I need to pull it up again because I saw it was tweeted out as well. Someone else caught it. I think Blake caught it as well. Yeah. Canucks Tocchet calls out Pettersson, says he hasn't liked his game lately. TMZ reads that headline and says, hang on a second. We have standards here. Like, come on now.
That's not up to our editorial.
Yeah, exactly. TMZ, by the way, has written about the Canucks before, and it's been sensationalist, but I understand why Rick Tocchet's mad. If you open your phone and that's the first thing you see is Canucks Tocchet calls out Pettersson, you didn't call him out.
Pissed off.
Yeah, I'd be pissed too. So I just, and I hope is that it was pointed out to Rick that it was not anybody in that room that came up with that headline and was the one that published that. Because, you know, even the people who work for that publication, like great people in that room. And I'll tell you, like, for people that don't know how the media really works, it wasn't them. Like, it was nobody in that room that came up with that headline and threw that out there. So I just wanted to get that off my chest. Really, really bothered me when I saw that today. Because I was joking about writing a headline like that, and then it actually gets put out there.
Well, when you're a media outlet, you're a reporter, you have a responsibility to manage your relationships with players and coaches so that you're accurately portraying what they're saying, because that's the only way they're going to be honest with you is if they can trust you. So I'll give an example. At the end of last season, I had a tremendous interview with JT Miller, used it in a training camp feature where he was brutally honest about his thoughts on the state of today's game and how it's evolved and how he thinks not talking about the Canucks, but league wide, but how he thinks it's more of an ego style of game, and how he thinks it's a lost art to quote unquote give an F. So I'm like, this is awesome material, but I want to, of course, portray these comments fairly. So the only place you found those quotes were in the middle of the article with proper context. Instead of, I knew I could tweet out those quotes with a link to the article and that it would get a ton of engagement and my article is going to perform way better. But I'm not going to do that because it's my responsibility to portray those comments fairly and to manage relationship and understand that nobody wants to end up in a situation where they see their name the next morning among controversial comments. So that's what I think most people in the room recognize, understand, and it's really frustrating when an outlet doesn't do that. Yeah, it's very frustrating. And the thing is, people in the chat are pointing it out, asking if it was someone in Toronto. Yeah, like probably. And that's the thing is, if that's the Leafs, I really don't think that happens, first of all. But second of all, when you don't have to answer for those comments. Yeah. Like if you or I write something like that, Rick Tocchet's going to pull us aside at practice and say, hey, I didn't like this. Like that's the relationship. There's give and take. Like they are honest with us. They need us to be honest in how we portray them, how we portray what they say to us. And like, there's been times, I'm not going to get into details, but there's been times where a player has misspoken in an interview and they didn't say, hey, please don't run this. But I can clearly tell that given the context, they wouldn't want this run. So I'll just subtract and I'll say, okay, my story doesn't need this. They might get in trouble if I put this. So I'm just going to pull this out. That's how it works. Like that's how it works. You have a relationship where you need to be honest in your coverage of the team for not only the fans, but also these are real people that we're reporting on and they have feelings and they have real lives that go into all this. And anyways, it just really pissed me off. And all I'm saying is I hope Tocchet knows it wasn't anybody in that room or hell, even in this city, that put that headline out there. So, well, I hope we don't get into a territory where it's like with Travis, for example, the just okay would translate to, oh, he had a pretty bad game. And Travis would never say anything that plainly because he was guarded for this type of scenario. So literally you learn to translate certain words. Okay, if he says just okay, that means he actually didn't like this guy's game. I'm thinking of Rick after seeing that calls up Travis. All right, it's time. Teach me how you, because they're like really good friends, Rick Tocchet and Travis Green, right? Yeah, they're really good friends. So Travis, I need you to tell me how you used to handle these guys, because you got nothing from Travis. Like give me the playbook of how you talked about Jake every day. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like Travis was like that, very guarded. There's a reason a lot of media members in this city like Travis, because when the cameras were on, he was very guarded. But when he wasn't being recorded, Travis is a different guy. Travis is a good guy. Like I used to see Travis Green at Coquitlam Express games when his kid played for the team, and he was always very nice whenever I would bump into him. Always very nice. And hell, even back then, I was hardly I hardly was even in the media at that point. But anyways, yeah. So I just want to get that off my chest. Dave Hall's going to join us shortly, but let's fit in anyone else before we get to... Actually, no, Dave Hall's ready. Dave's ready. Let's bring in Dave. I went overtime on this. We'll do anyone else after. I hope Dave's ready. I told him 2:30. I hope he's not running around. Can we find out if Dave's ready? Dave, can you just put in the chat if you're ready? Yeah, he's good. Okay, let's bring him in. Dave Hall, courtesy of our friends at 4 Winds Brewing, family owned and operated in Delta, home to the 4 Winds light lager, a crisp, clean, and easy drinking beer, a beer for everyone, a perfect beer for before, after, or during the game. Have your words been misconstrued? 4 Winds Light Lager is right there for you. Ask for 4 Winds Light Lager at your local liquor store or have some delivered right to your door through the online shop at 4windsbrewing.ca. And as always, please drink responsibly. Let's bring in Dave Hall. Dave Hall, our prospect guy. Dave, before we get to prospects and stuff, actually, it's okay. Do you want to comment on the EP40 stuff? Because I'm fired up about it, man, and I'm sure you've heard some of what I've said.
No, we can move. I think I agree with you guys. I think it's misconstrued, and we can move on. I agree with what you say.
All right. I love it. All right. I wanted to ask you about Vasily Podkolzin. It was wondered by our colleague at Canucks Army, Stefan Roger, today, if the Canucks should make an in-season call-up for their top 6 rather than looking on the trade market. And Vasily Podkolzin was one example that was brought up. My first question is, how is Podkolzin doing? And my second question is, do you think there is anybody in Abbotsford that could be a legitimate top 6 upgrade that they could call up right now?
Well, I think I'll answer the second one first. My short answer is no. I think there's 2 different questions here, right? Like the one you're asking is top 6, and there's, can anyone come up and play in the NHL? And the answer to that is yes, but in the top 6, that's just a lot to ask for many of these guys, and I just don't think I've seen anything from any of them that suggests that they could just hop in right now and, in a pretty critical time of the season to play top 6. But as for Podkolzin, he's, the first half of the season, it was going pretty well. In between October and December 31st, he had 16 points in 21 games, and that's with a little bit of leeway coming off of a pretty intense head injury. So he was doing pretty well, but in January, he's got 4 points in 10 games, and just overall, he just hasn't really shown anything that could really suggest that he would be able to contribute stepping in the NHL. He's a volume shooter. We love all the shots that he's taking. That hasn't been an issue, but the issue has been his ability to score off those shots. He's the only person in Abbotsford to surpass the 100-point mark. And, a game where we don't see him get 2 shots on net is a rare one, but we haven't seen him score goals from it. So it's one of those things where he's getting a lot of shots, but he just hasn't produced any points. And that's not without trying. Archie Baines has been feeding him for weeks now. And there's been a couple games where he just hasn't been able to put it in the back of net. So that's concerning. And so I think the question, if he can come in and play some low utilized minutes and, do the old Podkolzin thing that we're used to, I think that's one thing. But asking him to come in and play some top 6 minutes and hope to contribute to this offense is just, it's a little suspect in my opinion.
Sticking to the Abbotsford theme, how has Aatu Ratu performed relative to your expectations this year? Looking at the numbers, he's got 23 points in 38 games, which is solid in the sense that it's a type of production that typically leads to a future NHL career. But given that he is 21, it's not the type of production that screams future top 6 or even necessarily middle 6 potential. Where are you at with the season as a whole and big picture, the potential of the NHL player he could be one day?
Yeah, it's a great question. And also taking a little back to Podkolzin, that's the exact same thing, right? Like his numbers are fine, but in terms of that elite prospect that we're hoping for, it's just not really up to snuff. And it's the same with Aatu Ratu. There's been flashes where I think it was in mid-season where he was moved to the wing and he had that line going with Max Sasson and Linus Karlsson, and he looked fantastic. But the issue was that he wasn't really the one driving the play. And so as much as I've liked a lot of his game, he's got really good vision. He's been utilizing a lot of quick passes. He's been on the power play, which isn't really saying much for Abbotsford these days. But there are elements that we like in his game. But I just think overall, the thing that really concerns me is his future projectable center position. I just don't. His skating just really concerns me, and it's more just the fact that it's gotten a lot better since last year, but it still feels like he's still trying to catch up all the time. And in most of the games I've seen, I find he's more productive when he's on the wing, which I know this isn't what everyone wants to hear, but just for me, I just feel like he's been much more productive on the wing. And so I would think that would be kind of the way we're going with this. But overall, I just haven't really seen anything in his game to suggest that he can hop in either this year. Next year, who knows? But right now, he's not driving plays and he's not really scoring any goals that would suggest that he could do that, especially in a top 6 role in the NHL right now.
All right, so Archie Baines is another name. Obviously, we ask you about him every week, but Danila Klimovich scores a couple goals. I've been reading the Farm East, Dave. Danila Klimovich scoring a couple goals. What should we make of his season at this point? Because it feels like it's been up and down. We know there was an injury. What can you tell us about Danila Klimovich?
At this point, in my opinion, I just don't think you can really take too much into anything that's happened this season. It's been so tough for him. He's been battling injuries. When he's not battling injuries, he's battling healthy scratches. When he is in the lineup, he's getting 4th line minutes. Even now, he's got goals in back-to-back games, and he's still not getting a ton of minutes. So there's just not a lot there to really go off of anything. I think right now, as much as I hate to say it, it's just more of let's get him back on track. Let's get that confidence going. And just let's hope that we can have a better second half, because it's just been tough. One thing that I would really like is to see him just slot in on the power play at some moment, because Klimovich is playing his best hockey when he's not only forward checking, but when he's taking shots, and he's just not really getting that chance to take a lot of shots right now. And their power play is worse in the league, and it's embarrassing at this point. So at this point, they should probably be trying something, and I'd love to just see him get a moment up on the power play just to try to get some confidence going, because it's been inconsistent, to say the least.
Jonathan Lekarmaki has continued picking up points since returning from a fantastic World Junior Championship performance. What do you think is a realistic NHL timeline for him? I'm sort of looking at him, and in my initial sense, of course, not knowing nearly as much as you do, is I'm sort of looking at him and going, probably best served in Abbotsford next year, but has an outside shot of maybe doing the Höglander thing, of maybe surprising and playing some NHL games, but more realistically that the year after you've got a serious shot of him developing into an NHL player. What type of timeline do you expect for Lekarmaki?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Right after the World Juniors, I wrote a bit of a post-World Juniors piece on just what to expect, and that's pretty much my outline. I know that right now we're kind of, we're looking for that top six immediate solve it from within, but I just don't see that happening. And I think the realistic timeline, let's see how it goes next year. I'd said around Christmas, around right now, is when you can start to take a look at, how its first half has been, how the Canucks are looking, is it worth it? But I just don't really see the point in trying to speed up the process. At this point, he's had a really good season, but there's still so much to learn and translate over to the North American game. So at this point, let's get him over. Let's have a good summer of development, really close with the Canucks development team, get him over in Abbotsford, and just see where we go in Christmas. Hopefully he just translates seamlessly and we have him up scoring goals at the NHL level by January next year. But I just think it's more realistic to probably give him that wiggle room.
Dave, great stuff as always. Thanks so much for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
You as well. Dave Hall. Okay, so one really interesting thing. Well, he said a lot of interesting things, but one really interesting thing he said that I really want to focus on is this idea of making some sort of call up where you can work from within instead of having to go out and get someone in the top six. And really, it's just a Band-Aid fix, because we know they're going to go get someone for the top six. It's not if, it's when. Maybe a Band-Aid fix is calling someone up. Really doesn't sound like there's anybody there that can go up to the top six. But the thing I've been thinking about is, okay, is Niels Höglander an upgrade on Ilya Mikheyev or Andrei Kuzmenko right now? And you call up, I don't know, like an Arshdeep Bains, and he plays on your fourth line and Höglander moves up. Like, is that how any sort of internal promotion will work? And when I think about that, the thing that I keep coming back to is just that it's not going to really move the needle very much. That's at least what I think about it.
Yeah, and you're moving a lot of pieces around. The point I made yesterday, again, that Höglander's been so successful in this bottom six role. He lost track a little bit of his game. I think he had an initial strong couple of games on the Miller-Besser line in the top six, but after that, that line really started to struggle defensively. And it's only been since he got back to more of that consistent bottom six role that he's been able to make a terrific impact. And it's part of the progression that sort of happens with young players, that you're not going to turn from a guy playing in the AHL last year, like Höglander was, to immediately being a full-time top six answer. Now, is he the type of player that you promote if there are injuries, or if next game Pius Suter, for whatever reason, is struggling on that line, just to mix things up in game, you make that adjustment? I like that much more than as a plan A, banking on Höglander in the top six, and now potentially having somebody from Abbotsford up in a fourth line role, especially when you are already planning to make some upgrades at the deadline.
I really would like to see Bains get a shot at some point. I love Bains. Bains has been on the show. I've talked to Bains. I've interviewed him for a few stories. He's a good dude. I like Arshdeep Bains. And his brother on Twitter. Does his brother ever tweet at you?
I haven't seen.
His brother tweets at me a lot.
Oh yeah,
I like his brother. I love his brother. He's a great dude. And he's all, yeah. If we okay, so I'll tell a quick story because people will remember it. But we had Arsh on the show last year, I want to say, and his brother actually tweeted out. He didn't send it to me, but he tagged Faber and I. And he's like, this is our family group chat right now because we had a poll question of which player from Abbotsford would you like to see get a shot at the NHL level. And his dad sent to the family group chat, goes, please vote on this poll. He's like, please vote on this poll. Arsh is going on this show today. And his brother tweeted it out and sent it to us. And I just thought that was awesome. Because it's like, that's a lower mainland family. Like my dad would do the same thing if I was a pro hockey player, right? So it was awesome that they were, they're all Canucks fans. Obviously, they were listening to the show, and Arsh was a guest on the show. And I actually think his brother listens to the show. So
oh yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, shout out to him if he's listening. But yeah, his brother's a good dude. Always tweets me, and Arsh is a good dude as well. Just Arsh obviously doesn't tweet us as much as his brother does. Okay, let's get to anyone else. Presented by DoorDash. It's our listeners' chance to get involved and hit us up in the YouTube live chat, and it's also our listeners' chance to get 25% off and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when they use the promo code NATION25. That's 25% off and 0 delivery fees on your first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. All capital letters, NATION, and the numbers 25. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms do apply. And that double dash, I tell you, order from multiple restaurants, stores, same delivery without any additional delivery fees. Everyone can get what they want and need. And I'll be honest, how many times, okay, this happened to me. I want something and then my girlfriend wants something else and we can't agree, right? We can't agree what to get delivered. And I'm like, all right, you want sushi, I want a cheeseburger. No worries. Same delivery, no additional delivery fees because you're not going to do 2 orders with 2 fees. That's going to get so expensive. Same delivery, no additional fees. Amazing feature over on DoorDash. Be sure to go check it out and use promo code NATION25 if you've never used DoorDash before. What are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? Okay, let's get to our anyone else segment. In the YouTube live chat, Jesse C, regular contributor to the show. How impressive is the pace Hunter Brustevich is on? Could he be best season since Ryan Ellis in the O? I actually regret not asking Dave about Brustevich because our weekly report Blackfish over on Canucks Army, that's where you keep track of the Canucks prospects. Brustevich hasn't slowed down, man. Brustevich is still keeping it up, and he's on an absolute wagon of a Kitchener Rangers team. And yeah, it's very impressive. It's very impressive. He's without a doubt in a redraft. He goes in the second round. Probably should have gone in the second round on draft day. I think you actually said that yesterday. But there's probably going to be a case for by the end of this season, when you look at what everybody did in their draft plus 1 year, probably going to be a case for him to be taken in the first round.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at statistical comps, absolutely. I haven't done a full breakdown of it to see where does his draft plus 1 season stack up compared to other CHL defenders, but I think he's a player at this point that has an outside shot at developing into a future top 4 defenseman. It's going to take a long time for that to take place. You're not expecting that to happen anytime soon, but based off the comparables you're going to end up with, given his really impressive production this year, that's the type of range and ceiling we're talking about at this point.
This one from Kamesh A. What are your thoughts on the weak second period performances by the Canucks? They come out fast and heavy in the first, but in the second, the strategy seems to be withstand the opponent's pushback. Yeah, Rick Tocchet's talked about this. I don't think there's one answer, but last night it sure looked like the Canucks thought the second half of the first period was the start of the second period because they kind of did that where, yeah, we hit them with a lot. We didn't score, but we're going to pull back anyway and just kind of let them have this one. Yeah, it's concerning. I wish we had an answer. My thoughts on it? Yeah, it's concerning. Like you want to address that at some point, but again, not to make excuses, but it's kind of the dog days of the season. Team knows they're making the playoffs. Team's still picking up points. I don't want to say they know they're winning the Pacific, but they're in a good spot to win the Pacific now with LA in free fall with Pierre-Luc Dubois, whose number 1 talent is ruining locker rooms. And you've got, Edmonton storming back, but they've got a long way to go. Anyways, I'm just saying that it's kind of the dog days of the season. I think you're starting to see players just slip up on the details. And we like Rick Tocchet on this show. I think Tocchet's going to have it under control within a week, and it's going to be a moot point by the time we come out of the All-Star break.
Yeah, I don't think it's a massive concern, especially because you look at the context of these second periods, the Canucks are almost always leading. And it's just human nature that when you go up by a goal or two, that it's tough to replicate the style that got you that lead in the first place, because you look at why the Canucks have been successful. Other head coaches around the NHL have specifically pointed out, I believe Andrew Burnett was one, and then Arizona's head coach as well, pointing out that the Canucks are one of the best teams that they've seen this year at pressuring the puck, aggressively hounding it. Well, that's a lot easier to do when it's a tie game or you're in a situation where you're searching for offense, as opposed to you're, let's say, up 2 or 3 goals, as the Canucks have been, not obviously in the St. Louis game, but in other recent games, where now all of a sudden you're still looking to control play. You're looking to score more goals. You're not just thinking, oh, let's park the bus. But it is human nature that you're going to think a little bit more conservatively, because now you have something to lose, right? When it's a tie game, you got something to lose, in the sense that if you make a mistake, you're going to give them the lead. But it's a different frame of mind when you're leading. And like you said, there are other factors that go into it, like what stage they are in the season. The fact that in the Chicago game, for example, it's Chicago, so they know that.
We said that after that game.
Yeah, too. And I also trust that Tocchet's gonna tune them up, especially as the competition ramps up down the stretch here. They play teams like Winnipeg, Boston, and Vegas more often. I'm not too worried about it right now, even though, it is. They have had slip-ups.
Okay, Dave Hall is still in our private chat and our YouTube chat, and they were trying to get my attention, him and Grady in the chat, but I didn't look up. Back to Brustevich. He said, Brustevich is very impressive. He's just 15 assists short of Ellis's total of 76 and 31 behind his 100 points, and he still has 24 games left. He might do it.
Wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy to say. Trade value's got to be very high. No. We're not starting that. Okay. And Dave also said he'll be the best D1 defender by then. Wow. So we'll see. Dave, if you're still here, how's McWard and Hirose doing? That's a question for anyone else, and we don't know I don't know the answer.
I don't watch Abbotsford enough, but I'll say this. I mean, with Hirose at this point, I think he's isn't he older than Quinn Hughes?
He is. Yeah,
actually, I want to double check this.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah, so I mean, he's older than Quinn Hughes, and I mean, he's pointless in 13 games. I'm assuming there's obviously been injuries, but that type of profile does not.
I just want to say
future NHL talent, and honestly, the bigger problem is just stylistically. He is an undersized defenseman who, yes, he's very smart, but you look at the type of player that Tocchet and Foot want in their bottom four. They want penalty killers. They want more meat and potatoes, guys who can defend the front of the net, guys who can break up the cycle. That's not Akito Hirose.
Yep.
McWard, on the other hand, is still interesting to me.
I like that. Dave in the chat said, Hirose's been injured and spent a month in Van. It's tough to give a proper outlook. That's fair. But I just want to say, in the offseason, I felt so bad every time I did it. But there's all these people throwing out potential defense lineups that had Akito Hirose as like the second pairing guy. It's like, he did great down the stretch. And I had so many people in the game, like executives and stuff that I was talking to in the offseason, saying like, man, Vancouver fans really need to understand how much easier those games are to play in. When a college free agent signs at the end of the year and it's garbage time for a lot of teams, like, it's hard to contextualize it, but like Vancouver fans really need to understand how little those games actually mean and why those guys even get those shots in the first place, right? And it's just like, yeah.
It's a Jack Rathbone at the end of the shortened 56 game season. This is the first time it happened and I was fooled by it. So I tried not to put too much stock into Hirose's decent stretch last season. Rathbone at that point looked pretty competent. And I was thinking to myself, this guy can make the NHL team next year. And he did make the NHL team, but I thought he'd be a player that could stick around on the third pair for a while. That never materialized.
Do you remember when you came in? This was when we still did the show at my grandpa's house. You, me, Faber, little round table. You and I had to take that, in a couple of years, like, it's not hard to believe that the defense core on the left side will be Quinn Hughes, Ollie Juolevi, and Jack
No.
Rathbone. Yeah.
Rathbone, I agreed on. Juolevi, I blasted your take.
Oh, it was my take. Yeah, you
I
did share.
blasted your. I never want to be known as an Ollie Juolevi supporter. I blasted your take. I remember you were like, "Oh, if they lose Edler and just replace him with Juolevi in the top 4," I was like, "Dude, that's never happened."
Okay, I misremembered. I thought you were with me on that one.
Don't attach me to that. Take,
Maybe
man.
Faber was on it. He can't defend himself. Faber was maybe on that take with me. Yeah, it was Faber. My bad. I misremembered. People are asking who we think is going to get the wild card spots in the West. I'm taking a look here right now as it stands, unless they wanted me to do the East too. I mean, LA is holding it down, but if Pierre-Luc Dubois succeeds in his efforts, they'll miss the playoffs completely.
They're gonna. LA will grab one. I'm
a
sure.
wild card spot. Like you're saying, they're not going to win not going to get
they
in the spot in the
could.
Pacific. No, they can't. You have to remember. I just said Pierre-Luc Dubois on the team
Okay, if we're assuming that they don't get a top 3 spot in the Pacific,
because
they
Pierre-Luc
will
Dubois
get
plays for them.
a wild card spot, and they'll get the first one.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, honestly, it's a mismatch of teams I don't really like. So honestly, it could you got Nashville. I don't love them. St. Louis, not a huge fan. Arizona, up and coming. They have some pieces, but they're still not very good. Seattle, nah. Calgary, they're just all mediocre teams. Nashville, St. Louis, Arizona, Seattle, Calgary, and Minnesota. They're all mediocre.
Really
One of those
highlights-
teams will make it.
Really highlights how badly, if you're the Canucks or you're a Canucks fan, how badly you want them to win the Pacific and face one of those teams, as opposed to Edmonton or Vegas in the first round.
Well, win the West, not just the Pacific.
Yes, exactly.
Because
Yeah.
For there's a huge drop off between the first wildcard team and the second one, I think. Presuming, of course, that LA is the one that hangs on to the first wildcard spot. I'd love a first round matchup against Nashville.
Oh, yeah. St. Louis, I don't know, though. St. Louis has had the Canucks number.
Nah, they're fine.
Ducks are knocking on the door.
Stop it.
All right.
I will say, though, Leo Carlson, I watched some tape for
Mhm.
Calder ranking speed. Man, he's good. I almost swore there.
He is really good. He is very, very good. Are they still resting him? I know I should know
he
this.
came back from injury.
Yeah. Yeah,
Franchise
my wagon
center.
ducks. My wagon ducks. Yeah.
Better than Macklin Celebrini.
That's right. That's right. Do you want to talk about Pierre-Luc Dubois? Because I actually do. I want to
Okay.
talk about just kind of the LA Kings imploding. I'll go easy on the PLD
Sure.
takes, but Drew Doughty last night saying that, similar to what we heard Devon Taves say in Colorado about Jonathan Drew. I guess it never came out who he was talking about, but he's talking about someone in Colorado. Guys playing for their individual stats and not playing as a team. LA, of course, blew their lead last night in embarrassing fashion. As Tom McClellan called it embarrassing post game, right? They blew their lead to the Buffalo Sabres, who scored 4 unanswered goals in the second and third periods after LA got out to a 3-1 lead in the first period. And hey, I love Devin Levi as much as the next guy, but that was not a good performance for the LA Kings, who blew the lead. And let's just take a look at the stat line here. Pierre-Luc Dubois, 1 goal, -1, 2 penalty minutes, 2 shots on goal, 2 hits, and 11 minutes and 17 seconds of ice time. Interesting. Quentin Byfield, on the other hand, had a great night. He was a real shining light for LA. 1 assist +2 playing for the team, 3 shots on goal, 18 minutes and 14 seconds of ice time.
But genuinely, if you're a Canucks fan, you hope that Dubois contract hamstrings LA.
What do you mean hopes?
Well,
it is.
There's always
It's
a chance he
actively
can turn
happening.
around.
Oh yeah, we've been saying that since he was drafted. Maybe he'll turn it around if he asks for another trade because the coach was mean to him. Maybe it'll work out this time.
Oh man.
Maybe the weather isn't good enough in LA for him. If you can't tell, folks, I have very little time for this player. Anyways, also his goals in the power play can't even score at 5-on-5. I'm done. I just wanted to talk about it.
You just wanted to rip Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah,
That's
I
it. You
did.
didn't even want to talk with the LA Kings. You just
But in all
wanted to-
seriousness, the LA Kings are kind of imploding right before our eyes. Like something has to give. And I know the takes out of LA are like, okay, well, it's probably going to be the coach because you can't fire Pierre-Luc Dubois in season and you can't fire players. And I use him as a joke, but making a trade is a lot harder than firing your coach.
Well, I'll say this: they've had trouble scoring lately.
Mhm.
We know they're always going to be a stingy defensive team. I really like their blue line. They've got a lot of quality two-way forwards, but the problem with Dubois not hitting is a piece that can change the dimension of your offensive attack is you don't have enough star power.
Yep.
Right? Like, sure, I like Fiala, I like Kopitar, I like Kempe, Byfield's having a good year, but you don't have an Elias Pettersson. You don't have a Nathan McKinnon. You don't have a Jason Robertson like a lot of the other top teams in the West do. You don't have your Jack Eichel, right? So that's been LA's problem. And the idea behind the Dubois trade was essentially, let's take a bunch of middle of the lineup pieces and try and convert it into a guy that can be
A bottom of the lineup piece.
a 70 to 80 point type of difference maker, right? Because Velarde, Iafallo, Kupari, you tried to trade 4 quarters for Aluni, essentially. Dubois, unfortunately, has been outproduced by both Velarde and Iafallo. So that's not going out well. And that's a problem, is they don't have enough top of the lineup scoring punch. I think Trevor Moore, who's having an outstanding year, is leading the Kings in goal scoring, which is great for Trevor Moore, but not good for the LA Kings.
I love how you put that. That's a nice shout out to Torts. I love that quote. That was so good.
Dude, that Torts quote is an
About
all-timer.
You're
I
talking
love
about
it.
Dave Booth, right?
Yeah, Booth.
I would need to find the quote. You keep talking about the. Do you have any takes on Pierre-Luc Dubois? Because I got
I
a
don't
lot.
want to talk about him anymore.
Okay, I gotta actually find the quote because I want to read it for people. This is the thing. People sometimes, sometimes people read or tweet out to me or like message me and they say like, "Hey, you guys bring this up from way back when, but we never hear the context, right? Like we don't."
It's because we're the famous old timers.
Yeah,
that the
that's
kids don't get the references.
Yeah. Torts quote. David Booth is currently our best player, and that's not a good thing. It's a good thing for David Booth, but it's not a good thing for us.
I love Torts. His comments after Cutter Gauthier left too
Oh yeah.
were, what did he say? He couldn't tell Gauthier apart from the hole in the wall or something. Was outstanding. It's too bad it didn't work out in Vancouver, but man, I love Torts as a coach. The way he goes after media, it's awesome theater.
It is good theater. Man, Pierre-Luc Dubois,
Stop.
third
Okay, can we move
overall
on
pick.
from Dubois?
Oh my god.
I mean, it's better than Puljujarvi at 4.
And then you'll Levy at 5.
yeah,
Although, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking. But in a redraft,
at least Oli Levy doesn't make 8.5.
you know what? Okay, so I should also mention this. I told you and Grady today. We're gonna be back on Monday and Tuesday next week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Taking our little all-star break for ourselves. We'll be back on the following Monday, but maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday, because the Canucks don't play. Maybe we do a little redraft exercise of the 2016 draft.
Okay, for what purposes? Through what lens?
Pierre-Luc Dubois sucks ass. Oh, he sucks. He's not good. But like seriously, look
It's
up
a
and
bad
down that.
draft class, isn't it?
It's an interesting draft because Tage Thompson goes 26th. He's obviously a lot higher. Like he's higher than Pierre-Luc Dubois.
yeah.
So they're like, that's probably who falls to the Canucks. I'm just looking at it right now.
Okay, let's save it. Let's save
it. It'll be an interesting exercise. We'll redraft the 2016
And
NHL
2014
draft.
for Jake.
Yeah, we'll go back and do do a lot of them. We'll do a lot
And
of
Quinn
them.
Hughes number 1, ahead of Rasmus Dahlin.
Also, I just gotta say I love Dr. Haas in the chat. Dr. Haas and Corey Anderson loving my Pierre-Luc Dubois takes. Absolutely fleeced. They got fleeced on that trade. Absolutely.
Looking rough.
Yeah. All right.
By the way, I got a lot of flack in Quinn Hughes' rookie season. I said that because Dahlin got into the NHL a year before, but they're obviously part of the same draft class. Dahlin went number 1. And in Quinn Hughes' rookie season, where he had established himself as a top-rated defenseman, I said, right now, if you were to do a redraft, probably go number 1. And I got a lot of flack from Buffalo Sabres fans. I wonder what those Sabres fans are thinking now.
Oh, Harmon getting ready to talk his crap. I like it. We'll do a lot of redrafts. I think that'll be a good summer activity for us, is redrafting these ones. But we'll start with 2016 either tomorrow or next week. We'll go through it. Let's get to our Betway Bet of the Day, brought to you by our friends over at Betway. Also, loving this in the chat. A lot of people in the chat. Canucks Army needs to send Dave Hall a proper camera and mic. We're working on it, folks. We're working on it. It's coming. It's coming. It's coming. Also, shout out to Chris. Chris said, just want to say great job, guys. Enjoy listening to the podcast every day on the way home from work. Chris, thank you. We appreciate you listening. Really, really appreciate you listening. All right, let's get to our Betway bet of the day, brought to you by our friends over at Betway. Pierre-Luc Dubois to finish the season with the LA Kings at... No, it's a Thatcher Demko Vezina bet again, because the odds have changed. I brought up a few weeks ago when I pulled this one up that Demko is the favorite. Connor Hellebuyck is currently the favorite, and kind of like I alluded to the other day, it's a 2-horse race. Jeremy Swayman has the next best odds at like plus 800 or something like that. Thatcher Demko at plus 275 odds to win the Vezina Trophy this year. A $10 bet over at Betway will return you $37.50. Must be 19 plus play. If you choose to play, please play responsibly.
Oh yeah, by the way, it's supposed to be PL Dubois now.
What?
Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed, but it caught me off guard. But every outlet is mostly referring to him as PL Dubois now. Apparently, he doesn't like Pierre-Luc.
Oh, that's good news. I'm gonna 100% keep calling him Pierre-Luc. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking. It's like JG Pajot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Fine.
He wants PL.
PL.
So give him his PL.
Come on. PL. What a diva. What a whiner. Oh my gosh. Anyways, I can't think of anything that sums up.
Okay, kid, at least don't make fun of his name.
I'm not making fun of his name. I'm making fun of, I hate my coach. I hate this city. No, I hate this coach. I hate this city. No, I just need to change the scenery. No, I just need to change the scenery. And now it's PL.
Well, he made that choice before the season. He's a changed man in LA, apparently.
All right, whatever. You gotta score 30 goals to be able to change your name. Anyways, we'll close it out there. For my co-host Harmon Dial, our technical producer Grady Sass, and our intern Lachlan Irvin, my name is Dave Quadrelli. Thank you. Sorry, wait, stop the outro. Hi, David, in the YouTube live chat. More like PU Dubois.
Okay, that was terrible. You really stopped the outro for that?
Of course, I stopped the outro for that. Dave Quadrelli, Harmon Dial, closing it out. Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.